But we begin this hour as millions of Americans are expected to gather in small towns and major cities across the country today to protest what organizers describe as the authoritarian policies and corruption coming from Donald Trump and his administration. That surely includes the ongoing use of the Justice Department to enact Trump's retribution campaign. Yesterday, Trump's former national security advisor and vocal Trump critic John Bolton pled not guilty in a Maryland federal court to 18 counts of illegally collecting and transmitting national defense information, allegedly about everything from U.S. covert actions to foreign adversaries. These allegations were serious and were brought by career prosecutors. That is in contrast to the other indictments of Trump opponents, former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James, which were brought at the hands of a political appointee and a former personal lawyer to Donald Trump. Last month, the president said he expected more people he considers his political enemies to face criminal charges. And in a stunning Oval Office meeting this week, standing beside his attorney general, deputy attorney general, and FBI director, Trump delivered his latest list of targets for them to hear while claiming he has every right to do so.
Jack Smith, in my opinion, is a criminal. And I noticed his interviewer was, I think that was Weissman. And I hope they're going to look into Weissman, too. Weissman's a bad guy. And he had somebody in Lisa, who was his puppet, worked in the office really as the top person. And I think that she should be looked at very strongly. I hope they're looking at Shifty Schiff. I hope they're looking at all these people. And I'm allowed to find out. I'm allowed to, I'm, in theory, the chief law enforcement officer. But I have a very good, talented group. I don't have to leave it up to them. But I choose to, at this moment at least.
Joining us now, Christy Greenberg, MSNBC legal analyst, former federal prosecutor, and host of Courtside with Christy Greenberg on YouTube. Jelani Cobb, staff writer for The New Yorker, dean of the Columbia University School of Journalism, and author of Three or More is a Riot, Notes on How We Got Here, 2012 to 2025. And Miles Taylor, former DHS chief of staff during Donald Trump's first administration, and author of Blowback, A Warning to Save Democracy from the Next Trump. Miles, I want to bring you in, but first I want to start with the table here because we were just having, I'm sorry to exclude you, a lively conversation about the John Bolton charges and the 26-page indictment that a bunch of us nerds were feverishly going through this week. But there seems to be the argument that some Democrats are trying to make right now, which is that we should ignore these charges because they're just a part of Trump's retribution campaign. I think there's a little bit more context there, which, Christy, I want you to go into. And also just, I don't know, I want you to talk about this idea that we can hold several things to be true at the same time here about these charges.
And
that, yes, they can be a part of a political retribution campaign. John Bolton has been on Trump's target list for a long time now, actually one of the longest next to James Comey. But there's also maybe some merit here and maybe something problematic about what John Bolton was doing, regardless of whether or not it's been done before. And yes, that the fact that I think the more appropriate context here is that the current president was charged on 40 counts of doing something similar, although notably worse.
Yeah, so I don't think there's a question that Donald Trump is weaponizing the Department of Justice. The fact that you have the three stooges there that you showed in the Oval Office standing there as he goes forward and says, "Oh, at this moment it's your Department of Justice," but we'll like with that threat that if you don't, I'm going to list all of these names of people for you to investigate. If you don't, ... like what comes? I mean, it's clear if heads are rolling. If people are not doing what he wants in these various U.S. attorneys' offices, they're losing their jobs. So the threat is very real, and the weaponization is very real. And that said, taking, separately looking at each indictment, you have to look at the facts of each case, right? We saw the Comey indictment. I've never read an indictment for false statements where I couldn't figure out what the false statement was. His attorneys don't even know. They wouldn't even say in court. They wouldn't even tell the defense, what is the false statement? Who's person one? Who's person three? Like, what is going on here? Same with the Tish James indictment. That was an indictment where she allegedly benefited $18,000. In my experience, when you would do intake, there was a threshold. $18,000 doesn't cut it, even if you assume everything in the indictment to be true for a federal fraud case. That's just, you would decline that in any U.S. attorney's office. So, and again, it was also hard to understand if there was really a fraud there. It didn't seem much of it there. It was very bare bones. Whereas the Bolton indictment, looking at it on its face, 26 pages, there's a lot of detail here, and these are serious charges. This is mishandling of national security information. This does not appear on its face, at least, to be frivolous, where we would just say, oh, he said John Bolton is an enemy, we shouldn't look at this. No, if somebody is accused by career prosecutors of mishandling classified documents, we should look at what those allegations are. We should pressure test it. And look, he has the ability to go to court and defend himself, say he didn't think this was classified, he thought he was authorized, whatever he wants to say. That's why we have a process. But I'm not prepared to just dismiss this outright because Donald Trump clearly has a vendetta. The question is, did these prosecutors act on that vendetta in prosecuting him? The one thing I will say as an extension of that is, if he was an ally of Donald Trump, would he be indicted right now? I don't think he would be, because we're seeing, just as you posted, in the prior segment, George Santos gets a commutation because he voted Republican. If you are, Homan, who's allegedly accepting a bag of cash and $50,000, we don't even look into it. So there is clearly a double standard here. It is clearly troubling, but yeah, should we be troubled by this? I was troubled when Donald Trump was accused of keeping national secrets on the bathroom floor. I'm troubled by that. I'm troubled by this, too.
I think when this comes up, I always think people always bring up the overclassification of our secrets. But if these people know that the overclassification is a thing, why do they keep doing things like this, right? Whether that's President Trump, whether that's President Biden, whether that is former Vice President Mike Pence, and whether that is John Bolton. I want to play some comments he had on the Signalgate controversy and get you guys' response on the other side.
It never would have occurred to me to discuss anything sensitive, whether classified or not, anything sensitive, anything potentially sensitive, on any system other than government's own secure telecommunications system, which we have spent decades and billions of dollars to perfect. I just can't conceive it. My brain doesn't get it.
Well, he said his brain doesn't get it. However, here we are. Jelani, one of the things that is really important for people to understand, other than we can hold both things true or like we should think about both things in our same hands, is that this is the reason why the independence of the DOJ is so
100%,
paramount.
100%. And so, first off, to Chrissy's point, I'm wondering who is Curly, who's Larry, and who's Mo.
Yeah. You let us know during the break.
Right, we can sort that out after. But I think that, the reason that this becomes more complicated than it should be is precisely the context. And that's what independence is supposed to do. It's supposed to broadcast a particular kind of integrity. It's supposed to mean that across partisan lines that there are some things that you can just generally trust, that if there's an indictment being brought by the DOJ, it's something that will hold water. In this case, you have to ask, is this a Tish James kind of situation? Is this something else? And the mere fact that you have to ask the question goes to the heart of the lack of trust and really the lack of integrity. That's why you don't want a DOJ that is obviously doing the bidding of the White House. And it's hard, I think, for this White House in particular to understand this, but it really is in your interests to not pressure the DOJ, precisely because you want credibility in moments like this.